we focus on the problem. I need to lose more weight. I'm fat. I'm unhappy with my body. I binge eat. I emotionally, like, we go towards the problem rather than focusing on the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we shifted, this was a major shift for me, was when it's like, okay, I get to almost like co-create my reality, to get a little spiritual, I guess. But
Yeah.
we get to, our experience in life is a result of where we put our focus, where we put our attention, and we're creating that constantly. And so if we instead shift to what we want in life and getting really clear on what do I want my relationship to food to be like? What do I want my relationship to my body to be like? What will it look like, feel like all of these things, and direct your energy towards that, instead of, and that's part of losing the labels too, of losing the label of binge eater, emotional eater, stress eater, whatever you want to call it, food addict. These are all things that I identified with as well. And once we get rid of that, because it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy
Yes.
of, if I expect, I'm an emotional eater who eats at night, which is one of the things that a lot of my clients say, is I'm an evening eater. I can't control myself in the evening. Well, if that's the mindset that you have, it's going to keep happening over and over again. You're reinforcing that habit. It's like a habit loop that you get stuck in. So if instead we look at, like, okay, what if we got rid of that label and you ate at night? And that's just, okay, you ate. Move on with your life. Maybe you don't, maybe you do. It's just, that's not who you are anymore. Because, yeah, when we shift that focus away, that's really where the empowerment goes. Figuring out, and this is one of the first things that I work with my clients on, is, what do you want in life? If we get rid of all these problems or issues, what is it that you want? How can we work towards making that happen for you? what what's empowering to you? What fills you up? And so that's really the first part, is focus.
That's so awesome. And it's so true, right? Tony Robbins talks about, uh, totally lost my train of thought. But like, most people know what they don't want, but very few people know what they really, really want in
Yeah.
life. So focusing on those results that we want, and no longer, I love that. Like, we do create these so many problems when we say, uh, well, I'm a binge eater, or I'm a morning person.
Yeah.
And all of these labels we put on ourselves, rather than saying, with consistency and understanding and the practice, these correct practices, um, then uh, we continue to go through this cycle. So,
Yeah.
okay, so for those who are just watching, then for those who are just watching, sorry, it just said that it cut out our live stream again. So I've got this video recording. We're just going to post it in the group.
Okay.
But I'm sorry for all the problems that it's going through right now. It must be the weather outside.
Yeah.
I'm blaming it on the weather.
Yeah.
Um, but for those of you who are just joining us, we're talking about the 5 mindset shifts, and the first one is focus. And they spell out faith. So if you're grabbing a pen and paper, um, you know, write this down. Your first mindset shift starts with your focus. And I really love that. It really is about getting clear and what you want the results to be, rather than saying, I can't control this. I can't do
Yeah.
this. And we just give ourselves that excuse of, well, it's out of my hands because I can't.
Hmm.
When I tell my kids, I hate that word so much.
Yeah.
So, okay. So the first one is focus. What does A stand for again?
A is abundance.
Abundance. Okay.
So when we're talking about food, and even with the labels I just said about binge eater, food addict, emotional eater, all those things, we're putting limitations on ourselves,
Mm.
and we're coming from a place of fear and scarcity. Whereas if we think about abundance mindset of um, removing all those labels, removing the labels we put on ourselves and on food, whether it's clean, dirty, good, bad, healthy, unhealthy. Get rid of all those labels. They're blocking your abundance. They're blocking you from, it's just food. At the end of the day, it's just food. And sure, there are foods that I like to think of it as more nourishing for my body, like
Hmm.
fruits and vegetables. And I focus on getting mostly nourishing vegetable or foods for myself, but I can have whatever I want whenever I want it, because there's almost like this forbidden fruit syndrome, which is when I put a label of like, I can't, and I was guilty of this myself. Food rules. So, diet culture,
Yes.
going back to that, I can't eat in the evening. I can't have
Yes.
chocolate. I can only have this on my cheat day, which is once a week or once a month or
I hate
whenever.
those days.
I know. And like once we put those rules on ourselves, it's like I said, forbidden fruit, almost like when you're a kid and your parents tell you don't do that. Well, what do you want to do? Because that's what you're
Exactly
told
right.
not to do. And so we
Exactly
get
right.
that mental obsession over food again. And I did no sugar, no flour for 2 years, like at all. No bread, no cookies, no chocolate, nothing. Yeah. So
Wow.
what do you think I thought about all the time?
Hmm.
Chocolate. For me, it was chocolate, but it's like, just that brings the mental obsession more than anything else. And like going back to that idea of we either have like this complete obsession and restriction or completely out of control. You're swinging. That's when people have that pendulum of like, I feel
Yes.
completely out of control. It's like it comes from these rules that we impose on ourselves. So instead of putting those rules, this can be the really scary part for a lot of people. One of my clients, when I was teaching her about this, she's like, this is going to be my undoing. Like,
Hmm.
I can't do this. But it's like allowing yourself to have that abundance, have the thing that you're afraid of, so that it removes the power it has over you. Because if you're scared of it, you're not allowing yourself to have it, you're going to keep thinking about it. It's going to magnify, going back to focus, it's going to magnify that problem. And
Yes.
so allow yourself to have it. And then it becomes, the funny thing is, it becomes just another food. Like for me, chocolate is just another food now. When I know that I have this abundant mindset, I can have it anytime I want, whenever I want, however much I want. Then why would I want to binge on it? Why would I want to eat it emotionally at night? It's like, okay, I can have it. I can have it now. I can have it tomorrow. I can have it in 5 minutes, when the mood strikes. So it takes that power away from it and puts the power back in yourself.
Yes, that's so awesome. And for you to talk about the pendulum swing, that is something that I talk with my clients about as well. In 2018, I developed a heart condition because I was focused on this pendulum of here I was in this unhealthy area of wanting to lose the last of the baby weight. And I thought that over here where people were doing lots of diet and exercise, whereas where I needed to go back to, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not actually where I wanted to go back to, because when I found myself there is when I developed a heart condition and it required surgery and then a total, like you've said, a total shift in how we think about food, how we think about, and I love how you've talked about food as a relationship, um, because we don't think of having relationships with inanimate objects, and yet people have trouble with food and with money and with fitness and with these things that we can hold on to and grasp. We've become so materialistic because we have this fear that we're going to miss out on something, we're going to lose something if we don't
Mm-hmm.
keep it all to ourselves. And so this abundance is so freeing. I love that you've said that. um,
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So the next step starts with I. What's the next step?
That's intuition,
Okay.
because once we've allowed ourselves to have this abundance, a lot of people start asking questions like, well, then how will I know how much to eat, what to eat, when to eat? If I can have whatever I want whenever I want it, well, then what's going to stop me?
Mm-hmm.
Like all these questions kind of bubble to the surface. And so intuition is really, you innately know. This is where connecting with yourself and building, the T is next is trust, but
Right.
is connecting with yourself. Like a baby is born and that baby cries out for food when it's hungry, has its milk or whatever it's eating, and then stops when it's full. We're born with this innate sense of knowing when we're hungry and when we're full. And it's just a process of, through various different means, often with diets and food rules, or, things that happened in our childhood. People have stories of, I've talked to them about having the fridge locked, or so they
Oh.
can't have access to food. So they lose touch with those hunger cues. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's really developing that sense, going back to that sense of intuition, because your body gives you cues. Um, like even when people eat fast food or they have to drink, like one of the cues that they get is like heartburn. That's why like Pepto-Bismol is so popular. People aren't listening to the cues that their body gives them. Their stomach will expand when you're full.
Mm-hmm.
You'll feel energized when you eat something that is really nourishing to you. You'll, maybe have upset stomach if you eat too much or eat something that doesn't agree with you, or, we have all these cues. And so it's just the process of intuitively reconnecting with them and seeing it as a learning experience, because this is a process. Like any relationship, you're learning things, and it's not going to be perfect in the beginning. I think that's one of the things too, is people fall into this quick fix mentality. But it's like,
Yes.
yeah, this is something that's going to be sustained over your entire life. And so for me, I don't want to make any change that I can't see myself doing long term.
Yes,
I
exactly.
don't want to say maybe for the rest of my life, but if I can't envision myself wanting to do this, then it's not going to last, because our brains are conditioned to like avoid pain and seek pleasure. And so intuitively, we kind of know that. And so it's building that relationship and seeing it as, I call it as like a science experiment of
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, you overate today. I overate yesterday, like personally. But do I beat myself up over it? No, because it's like intuitive. I'm getting in tune with myself again of like, okay, now I've got a data point in my experiment. I'm listening to the cues. We'll move forward with that. And it's constantly, it's really exciting actually, because you're learning about yourself constantly. Um, yeah, so that's kind of intuition.
That's awesome. Um, so I have a question. A lot of people, and I I see this more. I see this in my children. I see this in people close to me who suffer from depression, anxiety. Um, my mother has suffered from those things for a long time, and sometimes I see it especially clear when someone doesn't want to develop that relationship with themselves, when
Yeah.
they find that as a very negative relationship. Um, so then whatever they've used, that food, to cover up building or diving into that relationship, is that something, how do you help your clients to come to terms with accepting who they are, like this intuitive, we are good enough, we have everything that we need kind of understanding of ourselves in order to get to know ourselves better? And like you said, this process is is a lifelong process of getting to know
Mm.
ourselves, just like our marriage, our relationships with our kids, or anyone that we have a relationship with long term. We are constantly adapting to new experiences and new outcomes, new understanding of people,
Yeah.
and we have to do the same with ourselves. So how do you help people, how do you help your clients come to this acceptance of who they are in order to build a relationship with food?
Yeah, that's a really powerful question to think about. And it's something that is gradual. It's not like tomorrow or you're gonna wake up and be like, oh, I'm perfect. I love myself.
Yeah.
Um, it's about also surrounding yourself with people who see the beauty within you, even when you don't. So when I worked with one of my coaches, that's exactly what happened. It was them reminding me of my strengths, because we went back to focus of what I wanted, what was important to me, what filled me up. And I wasn't quite there yet. It was like, this is just out of I'm working towards it. And so with my clients, it's like, once you figure that out, okay, we're working towards that. What are some baby steps along the way? It could be just as simple as looking in the mirror and just telling yourself, like, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
I accept you, you're good enough, reminding yourself each day that you're good enough, or some sort of, others, it's through prayer, connection with a higher power, gives them that, like, okay, somebody, something is there for me and loves me even when I doubt myself. And so there's just like little things like that that's kind of unique to the individual, but I think it's really about having support around you of people who actually see you, hear you, understand you, appreciate you. That's really important when you don't see it yourself. Because it's great to have that support and it's really essential in the beginning, but the end goal is to get to it where you believe it for yourself. So having that surroundings in the beginning, really important, really empowering. And then having daily practices, like I said, whether it's a spiritual practice, whether it's a daily affirmation practice, whether it's just self-care that you do every day, like as simple as putting moisturizer on your skin and just connecting with your body can be an act of self-care. So it's those are just some of the things that we work on, and it's nothing that's super complicated. It's nothing like over the top, just can take a couple minutes, but it's doing it consistently each day and building that positive habit loop. Where I had one client, I talked about this kind of continuum, because she's like, I most of the time my thoughts are negative about myself. I'm fat, or I'm not doing good enough. And like, she had lost like 80 pounds. So she had made significant changes in her diet and lifestyle. And so she couldn't see it though. And so it was, I talked about slowly over time, you start doing these practices, telling yourself you're good enough, proving it to yourself through each day showing up in one small way. And then over time, it gets to be on, goes from 100% of the time having negative thoughts about yourself to 100% of the time having positive. That's maybe not possible, but it's slowly getting closer and closer where the majority of the time you have that belief in yourself. And so that's really the key, is, and seeing that progress in whatever way it works for you, whether that's taking progress photos or writing gratitude lists and things like that. These are all things that'll get you moving in that direction.
Yeah, I love that so much, because then we aren't looking to the outside for validation. We've already, we're giving it to ourselves. And that connection, that's a really great point. Like, I love my meditation practice, but I don't do it consistently. But when I do, and that focusing on my body, how I'm feeling, that connection with myself. I love that you've talked about touch, like using our senses to make this connection with ourselves on a daily basis.
Yeah.
When we do that with others, we develop a deep love and appreciation for them, right? So why not do it with ourselves? Like, that's beautiful. So, okay, so that goes to trust. Then we develop this trust in ourselves. And before you start, it reminds me of a quote by Sean Stevenson, if you know who he is. Passed away a couple of years ago, but the 3-foot giant, who he talked about how self-trust builds confidence, or self-care builds confidence. And I believe it's through this trusting ourselves that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. And what you talked about, this intuition, this process of learning to trust ourselves, then becomes really powerful. So can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So learning to trust yourself is a big step. It is a process.
Yeah.
And it's really linked to what I was just talking about, of showing yourself each day through one small action, because we can have this story in our head of, I don't do this right, I don't do that right, all these limiting beliefs, and it's slowly working your way through that. I'll give the example of myself, actually. So one of the ways I built trust was through doing yoga each day. Talking about consistency, I'm coming up on 500 days of yoga next week.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was through and the yoga is 5 minutes each day. I just show up for myself, 5 minutes on the mat. If I'm not feeling it after 5 minutes, I have complete permission to get off. But it's just, and you can do that in any small way. Like, 1 minute of meditation, or writing out one thing you love about yourself each day. Like, it can be something simple, but doing it each day, day in and day out, that's really the key that builds that trust of like, I'm going to show up for myself each day. And when it comes to food, um, this was this can be really intimidating too, because you have years potentially of focusing on the problem, focusing on like, I can't control myself around food. If it's in the house, I'm gonna
Right.
eat it. I hear that all the time of like, I can't keep this in the house because I'll just go crazy on it. So you don't trust yourself around food items. And
Mhm.
so when we're going through this process of abundance and intuition and trust, it's like building in that credibility slowly. So maybe it's you don't reintroduce all the foods at once. Pick one or two,
Mhm.
or and try them out. See how it goes. Build trust around that. Build that sense of integrity within yourself. So it's like, okay, got the ball rolling, and then it can just keep going and going and going till you do have that sense of like being able to eat intuitively and just connect with yourself and trust yourself and give yourself grace. I think that's the main thing too, is giving yourself grace to make mistakes or try things out or experiment, however you want to think of it, and know that it's not going to undo all of your progress. But trust is, it's like any relationship, as we've been talking, it's built over time. And so it takes some time to just prove it to yourself. I think of it as almost like building, we have all these things conditioned into our nervous system that we have to deprogram. It's almost a process of unlearning, that
Mhm.
we can learn something or reconnect with what's true within us intuitively. And one of those things is this sense of trust as well. And so, like any relationship, you have to learn about yourself over time and you have to build that sense of trust. And when it's been taken away through maybe through binge eating or whatever, and you've lost that sense of trust, you need to work to bring it back and to see it as a relationship with yourself and with food, and that it's one that you have to work on. Like, we all have to eat. That's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like drugs or alcohol or something where people struggle with it and they're like, I can cut it out completely.
Mhm.
um, we have to work on this relationship, and it really is a priority if we want to live that really fulfilled, empowered, happy life. And so when you recognize that, it makes it like, okay, this is a priority. And that's another thing that I kind of talk about, is prioritizing your health. Like, health is wealth, however you want to think of it, but it's something
Mhm.
that brings us forward so that we're able to show up, um, for other people and for ourselves. It's all kind of interconnected, and that's what the next part is with H, is holistic. But it's starting to see too of like, when I trust myself, how does that improve my relationships? When I trust myself, how do I show up at work? When I trust myself, like, these are all looking at all the ways that it improves your life too.
That's so important. I love teaching people about prioritizing things to increase their productivity. And yet, you're right, like food is a priority, sleep is a priority. And yet, these two things and relationships, but the things that are priorities are usually our biggest struggles. So I love that you've said that, um, in order to develop a better relationship with it, you have to prioritize the
Yeah.
positive reinforcements, the
Yeah.
self-care, the consistency every day.
Hmm.
So the next step, the last one, is holistic.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I've kind of touched on it already, because
Mm-hmm.
holistic, everything is interconnected. But like I said, any change that you make needs to be one that you're willing and actually happy about, um, doing for the rest of your life. I mean, there's always days where you will and won't want to do things, that's fine. But like, generally speaking, if it's a big lifestyle change, like when people go on a diet, the reason that they fail, one of the reasons is it's not something that they can sustain long term.
Right.
It's, I have to give up all carbs for the rest of my life. If I want to maintain this weight, I can't have any carbs, just as an
Right.
example. Is that really how you want to, if you really are honest with yourself, how you
Mm-hmm.
want to live for the rest of your life? Because sometimes when we think about, like, I have a goal, people get very goal oriented, which is great. I want to lose this amount of weight in this amount of time. So they're like, I can do this. I will give up all my carbs or, whatever else. And they can get to that point. And it's like, all right, I've achieved the goal. I've lost the weight. And then they go back to eating carbs because they've achieved the
Yes.
goal. They did what it
Mm-hmm.
took to get there. And so holistically, I try to think of it. My recommendation is like an 80-20 approach of like,
Yes, I love
yeah,
it.
balance, finding balance, of like 80% of the time, I do take the actions that we just talked about. I'm eating the most nourishing foods 80% of the time because they make me have a sense of vitality and I get energized. And it just like, because it's coming from this place of love and connection with myself, because I love and connect with myself, I love myself, I'm going to give myself the things that really make me feel energized and I know are good for my body. Then 20% of the time, have that flexibility. If I'm out socializing with friends and I want to have a dessert, I'll have a dessert. Like, and not obsess about it or feel bad or guilty or anything like that. It's just like, this is life, because like food is an emotional and social experience. I think that gets forgotten about quite often.
So much so, yes.
Yeah. Like when we think about emotional eating, it's like, oh, I have a problem with emotional eating. But what if it wasn't a problem? What if you were just eating and because we're human, we have emotions and that
Hmm.
comes up. That's part of life. And we accepted it as better, like part of this 20%, let's say. And so that's really kind of the holistic thing, is to, like I touched upon before, is food is just part of your overall life. Like when we focus on the problem, it's like, oh, food is like, you know, I'm gaining weight, I'm not fitting into my clothes. And we see that as like the biggest problem in our life, whereas it's really connected to everything else. Like when I'm eating emotionally, it's probably connected to something else in my life. Like often going back to the nighttime eating, what are you really feeling and needing? It's this disconnection from the rest of like how you are yourself and how you're showing up in life. Like often I know you work with mothers, I believe,
Yeah.
and mothers are really busy. They're there for everyone else all throughout the day. It's go, 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 go from the moment kids are awake. And so when it comes to the end of the night, how are you feeling? Often tired, you know, haven't had time to yourself. So one of the ways that we get that sense of energy, because if we eat like, high sugar foods, they're going to give us energy immediately. It's a
Hmm.
change in state. Um, so that we're getting, instead of figuring out like, oh, I'm tired, what can I do to get energy in a sustainable way? I go to food because that's the thing that we know will give it to us. Or I don't have that sense of connection when I'm sitting there eating. I get that sense of connection with myself. I've taken the time to eat something. Then all the emotions come up afterwards about having done it. But so it's really about holistically looking at life, my lifestyle. Okay, what's causing me to be tired at the end of the night? What's causing me to be low energy? Is there anything that I can kind of do? Can I talk to my partner about changing, like they do bath time or bedtime or something on this night so that I have that time to decompress and find time for myself? Or, it'll depend on the person, but it's really connecting back to your feelings, your needs, and then finding out where these are coming from, and getting to that root cause of the issue and addressing it in some way. And it's usually just a simple shift. Sometimes it's a bigger issue. Like, for example, I had a client who was eating at night and she had a lot of guilt. And what it was coming from wasn't from the sense of being tired, it was actually from a lack of boundaries in her life. So she was feeling really upset and angry. And instead of expressing herself and putting like healthy boundaries with her family in place, because that's a big change. It takes time to build those skills.
Yeah.
She would just eat, and that would give her the immediate sense of relief, but the problem would persist because it wasn't, she was seeing the causes like, oh, I'm eating, but really it's like, what's causing me to feel this way where I go to food? And so it's about building in those self-care practices of at night, okay, sometimes food is what you want when you go through the feelings and needs and what you actually want.
Hmm.
Other times, there's other coping mechanisms, journaling or yoga or meditation, while at the same time, so you're doing the coping mechanism, the healthy, sustainable one, you're also dealing with the underlying cause, which for her was, okay, I'm feeling guilty and resentful towards my family. I don't like these feelings. How can I change that? Learning to create healthy boundaries. And so you have to have kind of like a two-pronged approach, but it's bringing all that back to holistic is that everything is connected. My eating is connected to my relationships. My eating is connected to my work. My eating is connected to my socialization. Like, I don't want to be on a diet where I start saying, oh, I can't go out with my friends because there might be food around.
Mm-hmm.
It's all connected. And so you have to have a lifestyle approach to it. And also a proper kind of nutrition approach too, of like nourishing my body with nutrient rich foods so that I feel my best too.
Yes. I love the 80-20 approach because I think, and I love the flexibility that you talk about with the 80-20 approach. It's so funny how most of the time with like we put in, for example, when people want to lose weight, the first thing that they will do is go to exercise.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, that is approaching it with I'm going to do 80% of the work to get 20% of the results.
Yeah.
Like moving at a snail's pace to get the results that they want, when really they could just take this faith, you know, formula and apply that to do 80% of the work or do 20% of the work, which is really a lot of mindset work, and get 80% of the results. So
Yeah.
I love that you've talked about how, just how we do one thing. And Jim Kwik, if anyone knows who Jim Kwik is, I have learned from him for the past few years, an amazing man. And he says, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so it's true, like the relationships that we have with one thing is always connected to something else. Just like our mental health and our physical health are not disconnected, our eating habits and our work habits are connected. Our eating habits and our relationships are all connected.
Mm-hmm.
So to see everything in a big picture,
Yeah.
and then trying to strengthen that connection or improve that connection rather than burn bridges, cut ties, isolate yourself, is so much more a better approach and happier approach to a long, sustainable, fulfilling life that we want to create for ourselves. So that's beautiful. Is there anything else that you want to share? I know that we went in a totally different direction than you were expecting today. So I appreciate you kind of just going with the flow. But is there anything else? Is there anything you wanted to touch on that we haven't yet today?
I guess I have it written as down as number one of the things I was going to talk about. But emotional eating is not bad. I wanted to say that because we have so much judgment towards ourselves for engaging in like, oh, I can't believe I ate that. Why do I keep doing this? Like I talked about with focus, but emotional eating, once we remove that judgment, we can actually start looking at what's going on. And like I said, like we've been discussing, it's food is more than just food. It's an emotional, it's a social, it's a physical experience. And so why do we want to take emotion out of eating? Why do we want to take the enjoyment out of eating? Why do we fear, going out of control, but we don't fear deprivation? Because when we go on these diets, we're depriving ourselves of
Yes.
things, but we don't fear that nearly as much as we fear gaining weight or eating emotionally. So what if we switched that and we embraced it instead and saw it as an act of like love? And I think that's really one of the things that I had to really overcome was just embracing my eating, embracing myself. Like they're an extension one of the other. And being emotional, we're emotional beings. So
Yeah.
why do we expect ourselves to act in a way that is completely devoid of emotion?
So true. What a great point. And you talked about that just a few minutes ago with the holistic view of like when we're experiencing something like your client was experiencing frustration with not having boundaries, just sitting and trying to understand that emotion is not something that we are naturally inclined to do, because it's that fight or flight, like survival mode. We go into whatever is easiest, not building what new connection might help us the most. So that I really love how you said that, and just embracing the emotions of the experience. Too often we're eating in our car on the go, we're standing up in the kitchen, we're eating as we're preparing food, and then we sit down to eat dinner with our family. And so we've eaten 2 meals by the end because we're not paying attention to the relationship that we have, or the things that we're doing. So building that relationship is so important. And those emotions are important. That's so important. I'm glad that you shared that. If people want to go deeper with you, how can they find you? And by the way, for all those watching, we also have a PDF that Elizabeth has shared. So we'll share that after we share the video of this, we'll share it in the group, so you can have access to that as well. But tell us, how can people find you if they want to go deeper with you?
Yeah, they can find me on, if they want to book a call to talk to me, no obligations, it's chatwithelizabethfaith.com. And they can find a time that works for them. And they can also find me at my Facebook group is Vegan Food Freedom, although I don't just work with vegans. And my website is veganfoodfreedom.com. And they can find me on Instagram and all kind of social media platforms at Vegan Food Freedom. On Instagram, it's at vegan_food freedom. But like I said, when it comes to binge eating and emotional eating, it's really more about the mindset shift. It's not really about the food. I haven't talked about the food at all during this talk, because it's really about your mental approach. And so I may be vegan, but I don't work exclusively with vegans for that reason.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And I love that too, because I am a certified nutrition coach and a personal trainer, but but my focus is on the psychology of health, the habits, the systems, the mindset that goes with developing those healthy habits, to make the health, to make those results come. Because if we focus on the symptoms of I'm overweight, again, we put those labels on ourselves, like you were saying, and we just need to let those things go. So that's awesome. When we post this in the group, will you post all of the links for people to find you in the comments below?
Sure, I'll share all my social media, my Facebook group and things like that too.
Okay, awesome. Well, this has been so fun. It was lovely, really a lovely experience to talk with you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you do and your experiences. Just make everyone else's lives better because of this compassion and understanding you have, and the ability that you've had to overcome it and now serve others with your experience. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm happy to answer any questions people have as well in the group. I'll be monitoring it.
Okay, awesome. That sounds great. Thank you everyone who's watched this, and give a shout out to Elizabeth in the comments below once you take a look at this video, and make it a great day. Or if you're listening to the podcast, make sure you reach out to her on social media, and make it a great day. And we'll see you all very soon.
Yeah.